to my channel. I'm Elaine. This is Elaine is XYZ, a vlog that's currently about just about anything I find interesting, really. Recently, I got to visit a part of China that has been on the top of my exploration list for quite some time. The province of Qinghai, which is located generally in the Midwest, I would say, is one of the largest and least populated provinces here in China. I'd been interested in it after seeing this one Chinese movie about a whole bunch of vigilante rangers protecting the wild animals there from poachers. The movie actually does have an English release now. It was called Kekeshili in China, but it's called Mountain Patrol in English. And it's definitely something worth checking out if you just like, I don't know, action movies about more rugged areas. So when a group from Beijing said they were doing a 5-day trip there, I was like, sign me up! The group is called the Hutong, by the way, and they were fantastic. Just a super interesting itinerary, very professional guides, and if you see any drone footage in this video, it's because they had a drone. But then I lucked out even more because it turns out that a friend of mine had been planning a road trip basically through that very region. And that's when I first learned that this area was called Amdo of the Tibetan Plateau. So that's why I'm going to call this video Exploring Amdo. Maybe hashtag Tibetan Plateau for better SEO, because I don't think anyone knows what Amdo is. Well, get ready to learn something! Yay, I'm making this travel blog kind of useful! So, like all giant and old countries, China has a long history that's kind of complicated and consists of dozens and dozens of little kingdoms that have fought wars and controlled territory at some point or another. The Tibetan kingdom, for several reasons, is probably one of the most famous globally. But very few outside of China, but really inside of China as well, realized that the Tibetan kingdom encompassed way more than just what's considered the Tibetan province now. In fact, it sprawled across a wide swath of Western China, obviously Tibet, but Qinghai, Gansu, and Sichuan as well. And that whole Tibetan Plateau region is divided into 3 areas. There's Wucang, which is basically Tibet. There's Kham, which is more or less located in Sichuan, and then there's Amdo, which covers this area that I traveled. Most people who explore the Tibetan Plateau end up going to Wucang because, you know, Tibet. But yeah, the autonomous region of Tibet is actually kind of sensitive here, so foreigners need to plan quite a lot more if they actually want to visit it. The regulations are constantly changing. You sometimes have to be a part of a tour group that consists of only people of your country. Amdo, on the other hand, was a fantastic introduction to the culture of the Tibetan Plateau that's not currently overrun by tourists or bureaucratic oversight. And Amdo is beautiful. If you're like, I must go to Tibet to learn about Tibetans, then I understand you. But if you're open to learning about Tibetan culture in a way that's not really checking off boxes that other travelers have, and you'd rather basically plan your own road trip, really consider the Amdo region. So Amdo actually covers 280,000 square miles, so even 2 weeks of really ambitious travel didn't cover everything that you can see there. 280,000 square miles is roughly the size of Texas, but I'm going to divide my experience into 3 main categories that you may choose to focus on. Buddhism, because yes, Tibetans are known for their Buddhism. Nature sites like the Yellow River and mountains, though maybe not the most famous mountain of the region called Jiuzhaigou because it was closed due to earthquake this time around, and Tibetan nomad culture. Of course, whatever you decide will probably contain a good mix of all 3, but you know, I have to structure ping-ponging around this region in 2 weeks somehow. So this is how I'm choosing to do it. So I'm going to start with the Buddhism aspect first, and this is going to be a very basic introduction because other than reading Hermann Hesse's Siddhartha, I don't actually have very much experience in Buddhism or understanding Buddhism. And further complicating things about this thousands-year-old religion is that Tibetan Buddhism is actually very different from Indian Buddhism and Chinese Buddhism. It has incorporated a lot of the local shamanistic religion called Bon into its practices and rituals. For instance, prayer flags, kind of the calling card of the region, that's actually from Bon. Fun fact, the 5 colors of prayer flags will always be arranged from left to right and will always follow the sequence of blue, white, red, green, yellow. I got the nails to remind me. Even further complicating things is that Tibetan Buddhism is actually composed of 4 different schools. So whichever temples or monasteries that you go to may have slightly different traditions because of that. For instance, one very famous activity to watch is something called a Tibetan monk debate, where a bunch of monks stand around in a courtyard or garden and they kind of do the slapping motion, and while they are asking each other philosophical questions in Tibetan, and that is more of a Gelugpa school thing. So there are hundreds of monasteries in the area. Basically every town has one. But some of the more famous ones that I visited that I'll talk about now are Labrang in Gansu province and Rongwo in Qinghai. So Labrang, located in this township called Xiahe, is home to the largest amount of Tibetan monks outside of Tibet, and also boasts the longest corridor of prayer wheels in the world. Worshipping at the temple is free for locals, but as they should probably, they charge foreigners and Chinese tourists to come and take a look around. Meanwhile, Rongwo, located in a township called Tongren, is known for producing the vast majority of these Tibetan Buddhist paintings called tanka. We went to a special school there started by monks, which gives disadvantaged children a chance to learn how to paint tanka. And apparently if you want to enroll, you totally can yourself. But it's definitely not a hobby thing. To be considered able to paint one, you need 4 years of schooling. And even the basic paintings take something like 4 months to complete. Nature sites. The whole region is filled with gorgeous natural scenery. The Yellow River is probably one of the more famous sights to see in this region. Yes, it runs through most of China, but its source and its first bend are all in Qinghai. In fact, this may be the only area where you can see the Yellow River before it actually gets yellow, and that's a big deal. Chinese civilization began on the Yellow River, and it's nearly ended several times because of the Yellow River. Our love-hate relationship with it and its floods have inspired symphonies, and I guess that's why this is a special tourist site. Then there are the grasslands, and one of the summer attractions of the region is its Huahai, or seas of wildflowers. If you manage to pass by Zoiga, in Chinese Ru'ergai, and you really should pass by Zoiga, you only need to drive 10 or 15 minutes out of the city to get scenery like this. We stayed at a place called Habitat Mountain Camp, which had some lovely fully outfitted yurts, an actual city toilet, and people who knew some English for all of you non-Mandarin travelers. Besides all of those Huahai, the Zoiga grasslands are actually home to Huahe, or Flower Lake. Officially known as Ru'ergai Wetland National Nature Reserve, it is the largest plateau marshland in the world and is roughly shaped like a flower. We lucked into a really beautiful day to see it. And finally, the mountains. Okay, there are a lot of these in the region and they are all gorgeous. I feel like I should stop talking so you can just see some drone footage of these giants in the mist. I will say, most of these mountain terrains were open but very wild, so either be an experienced mountaineer hiker or get a guide. Especially when the fog rolls in, your chances of getting lost are pretty high. In Gansu, we went to a town called Langmusi to take part of a horse trek from a company called Langmusi Trekking. They got us on horses and we rode across several hours of just absolutely stunning scenery to the capital letters, authentic nomad life. And it really did feel like we were saving the best for last. Now, to set the scene, most minority experiences in China are pretty rote. They take place in some sort of state-sponsored curated context. You sometimes get to eat a little bit of their cuisine, they do a song and dance for you, and then you're like, okay, cool, I guess I'll exit through the gift shop. In comparison, this really was us drawing in on people living their lives. We had the option to ask them to let us participate in any of their daily tasks, and we found ourselves more or less failing at each one. Activities they suggest include spending 2 hours helping them chase their roaming yaks back to the camp. We did maybe the last 15 minutes because it was just outside the tent. Tying up those yaks for the night. Since the yak dad and moms are skittish of strangers and very strong animals, we were told to just help with the babies instead. Turns out the babies are very strong too. Helping the women milk yaks. Ultimately, we just watched our hostess milk yaks for over 4 hours and eating samba. This we could do. Samba is milled roasted barley that's then mixed with yak butter and hot water or tea to form into little balls, and Tibetans love this stuff. They will eat it for breakfast, for lunch, and then dinner again. Apparently, it's a very, very nutritious superfood. Unfortunately for us, due to the too wet weather, we didn't get to participate in another suggested activity, helping them spread yak dung to dry in the sun. So I suppose that's something someone else can look forward to. According to the organizers at Longlusi Trekking, it will be a surprise if this lifestyle lasts past the decade. Young people are being lured away by how much more comfortable and profitable city living is, and this is a very physically strenuous life that old people can't hang on to for very long. Climate change is already wreaking havoc on both the yak populations and how nomads survive off things like drying yak dung. And there's just the whims of China. China tends to like it better when people are in stable places where they can be ostensibly safer and easier to track. And nomad life does not fit this mold very well. Which is to say, if you've ever wanted to see how nomads live, time is running out. Already, tourism from curious culture hounds like us is one of the pillars keeping the more rooted traditions alive. So, sorry if that's a little bit of a weird note to end on. Anyway, in conclusion, Amdo is amazing. Obviously, it's much easier to arrange this kind of stuff if you happen to speak the local language, or at least Mandarin, because I guess the local language is Tibetan. But I will have some English language resources for those of us who don't know Hanyu, and I'll put them in the description below. If you do know Mandarin and just want some tips of places to travel, feel free to make a comment and I'll reply in comments. I hope that gave you a good introduction and some good reasons to visit this region of China. If you got something from this, please like and subscribe, and you can find me on my website at www.elaine-is.xyz for some more information of things in this area. Like, for instance, I didn't talk very much about the Sichuan part of the trip. I went to see giant pandas there. And also, I'm on Instagram and Twitter at elaine-is.xyz. Thank you!